Some men retire and find peace. I found silence, a long, heavy, suffocating kind of silence that creeps in slowly. Not with a bang, but like fog, soft and quiet. You don't really notice it at first. There's the retirement party, the shadow box of medals, the cake nobody finishes, the standing ovation that feels more like a funeral than a celebration. Then you go home, and the phone stops ringing. Your boots gather dust. Your body slows down. And suddenly, for the first time in 4 decades, nobody needs you at 0500. That silence, it gets inside you. I served 35 years in the United States Army. Started as a private, retired as a full-bird colonel. Infantry, airborne, 2 wars, 5 overseas tours. Over a dozen bases. God knows how many soldiers I've led, buried, trained, disciplined, or helped get sober. I never once failed a mission, never missed a report. I lived by the book. Army values weren't just words to me, they were air. Honor, loyalty, duty. I believed in them. I still do. And through all of it, the only constant in my life was Laura. We met in 1991. I was a young lieutenant stationed in Georgia. She was a guidance counselor at a middle school near Fort Benning. She had this quiet strength about her, the kind you only recognize after being around chaos. Laura didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She just looked at you, calm, patient, like she already understood what you were trying to say before you opened your mouth. We married fast. That's how it was back then. Deployment schedules didn't leave much room for slow romance. We were compatible, simple as that. She wanted stability, and I needed someone who could handle instability. For the next 30-plus years, she followed me to Germany, to Texas, to Afghanistan, to D.C., to Korea, and back again. She never complained. She worked wherever she could, often below her skill level, just to stay with me. Sometimes she called herself my shadow. I hated that word. I told her she was my home. We never had kids. Tried, failed, then tried to accept it. That pain? It's a quiet one. It never goes away, it just stops screaming after a while. But Laura and I filled our lives with other things. Work, travel, friends. She made gardens at every base house we ever lived in. I bought her coffee mugs from every PX in the world. We had a rhythm, a life, a sense of permanence in the chaos. I never doubted her, not once. When I finally retired at 59, I thought we'd earned peace. Bought a modest house in a quiet suburb of South Carolina. Had a wraparound porch, a little fenced-in backyard, space for Laura's flowers and my grill. I thought, this is it. The war is behind me. Now I get to be a husband in full. I even joined a local veterans mentorship program to stay busy, stayed in shape, cut the grass myself every Sunday. The simple things. I thought they mattered. I thought they were enough. Laura started doing yoga a few months into our new life, said it helped with stiffness in her back and gave her something to look forward to in the mornings. I supported it completely. Hell, I paid for the year-long membership myself, told her to treat herself. She hadn't had much that was hers over the years, always supporting me, always adjusting her life to mine. Now it was her turn. She started going twice a week, then 3 times, then 5. Started buying new outfits, talking about mindfulness and alignment and breath control. It sounded harmless. It made her smile. She looked younger, happier, more alive than I'd seen her in years. I figured, good. After everything she's given up for me, she deserves some lightness in her life. Something for her. Then came the name. Ethan.
At first, just in passing. Ethan said my form was really improving. Ethan told me I hold tension in my hips. Ethan says I have incredible balance for someone of my age. It didn't register. Just a guy at her yoga studio. Some tattooed millennial with a man bun and a playlist full of sad indie music. I didn't think twice. Not yet.
The signs didn't come all at once. They never do. If betrayal walked in wearing a neon sign, most of us would catch it before the damage. But it's quieter than that, more patient. It seeps in like rust, and by the time you see it, it's already eaten through the steel. Laura started dressing differently. Not overnight, it was gradual. New leggings, tighter tanks, expensive yoga brands I'd never heard of. I remember noticing a receipt one day, $118 for a single pair of leggings. I teased her about it, and she just laughed, said, "It's good quality. They last forever." I didn't push it. Hell, I wanted her to feel good. She'd spent 30 decades being practical. If she wanted to wear form-fitting clothes to a yoga class, why would that bother me? It shouldn't have. And yet, it did. Then came the phone habits. Laura never used to be glued to her phone. In fact, she used to complain when I stayed on mine for too long, reading military news or answering old buddies' texts. But suddenly she was always on it. Her ringer stayed off. Her phone was always face down. She'd step outside to take calls or say, "It's just Janice," and chuckle like nothing was going on. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid one, the jealous husband watching his wife breathe wrong. But I wasn't blind. Something shifted. One afternoon, I walked past the bathroom and the door was cracked just enough. She was sitting on the floor in a towel, texting. Her face lit up like a teenager's. She didn't see me. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. Like a coward, I guess. Or maybe I just didn't want to face the answer I already knew. And the smell. That's what finally pushed the suspicion into certainty. Laura always wore a specific perfume, subtle, clean, a lavender and citrus kind of scent. But one evening, she came home from yoga smelling like sweat and cologne. Not mine. I don't wear cologne anymore. I haven't in years. This was something else, spicy, younger, like the kind of scent you'd smell in a club or a bar bathroom. I asked casually, "Smells like you hugged someone wearing cologne." She laughed, not nervously, confidently. "Oh, probably Ethan. He gives all of us hugs before and after class." I forced a smile. "That's professional?" She shrugged. "It's just his style. He's harmless." But something about that word, harmless, hit me wrong. Harmless men don't leave traces on a woman's skin. Harmless men don't become household names. I tried to play it cool after that. I started watching. Not spying, just noticing. She was locking her phone. Her passcode changed. She started working late, which was strange considering she had scaled back on her part-time counseling job and yoga was her only real activity. She claimed she was helping a friend organize a fundraiser. Said Ethan was involved too. She mentioned his name 3 times in one conversation. I nodded through it, but I was boiling inside. One night, she left her Apple Watch on the charger in the bathroom. I've never been the snooping type. I lived by trust, and in my world, honor meant you respected privacy. But something in my gut, that instinct I spent 35 years sharpening, told me to check. So I did. I opened her texts. And there it was. Not just messages, not just flirtation, full-blown photos. Words no married woman should be sending to anyone, let alone someone 28 years younger than her. He called her goddess. She called him my secret. There were messages about last Wednesday at the studio when no one was there, about missing the way you make me feel after class, about things I won't repeat even now, because typing them feels like betraying myself. My hands were shaking. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Not even sad. Just cold. Like a switch flipped.
Like I'd left my body and was watching this happen to someone else, some other man who devoted his entire adult life to duty, honor, and a woman who used to bring him black coffee every morning for 30 years straight. I went back to bed. Didn't say a word. She rolled over and said, "Are you okay?" I said I was tired. She kissed my shoulder and whispered good night. And I lay there for hours staring at the ceiling, knowing everything had changed, but not knowing yet what I was going to do. Because I didn't just lose a wife. I lost the truth I believed in for most of my life.
I didn't confront her that night, or the next. It's strange how betrayal slows everything down. You think you'll explode, that anger will kick the door in and make you shout, throw things, pack your bags. But for me, it was the opposite. I became still, too still, like I was watching the end of something I'd spent my whole life building, and I wanted to memorize every crack as it formed. I waited 3 days. 3 days of pretending. 3 days of coffee and morning routines, of pretending not to notice how quickly she grabbed her phone when it lit up, of watching her laugh at messages from a man she swore was just a harmless instructor. She wore her hair down more often now, painted her nails. Little changes most men might call self-care, but I knew. I saw it in the way she moved, like her body had become someone else's to impress. The final straw came on a Wednesday. She came home late, said yoga class ran long because everyone stayed after for wine and stretching. That was the exact phrase, wine and stretching. She said it like I wouldn't blink, like it was normal. She walked right past me, kissed me on the cheek, and headed to the bedroom. I stared at the door for a full minute before following. She was changing. I stood in the doorway and asked, calmly, "How long has it been going on?" She froze. That was the first crack. She turned around slowly. Her shirt was halfway over her head when she paused and met my eyes. "What are you talking about?" My voice didn't shake. "You and Ethan." Silence. No denial. No outrage. No, "How dare you?" Just silence. Then a twitch at the corner of her mouth. Not a smirk, not guilt. More like calculation. Like she was sorting through excuses and picking the least damaging one. "How long have you known?" she finally asked. I just nodded. That was all the answer I needed. She sat on the edge of the bed like her legs stopped working. I stayed standing. I didn't want to sit near her. I didn't want to breathe the same air. She started to talk. First the apologies. "I never meant for it to happen." Then the blame. "You've been distant since retirement." Then the justifications. "He listened. He made me feel seen. You were always in your head, always somewhere else." I stood there while she unraveled. 30 years of trust. And this is what was left? Half-hearted logic from a woman who built a whole affair while I was rebuilding a life outside the army. "I never stopped loving you," she said. I finally sat. Not beside her, but across the room. I looked her in the eye and asked, "Did you sleep with him in our house?" She hesitated. Just for a second. And that second told me everything. "Yes," she whispered. "Once." Another lie. I could hear it in her throat. You don't ruin a 30-year marriage for once. I didn't yell, didn't cry, just said, "You disrespected everything we built." She started crying. I didn't move. I'd seen soldiers bleed out. I'd carried men who died believing they mattered. And here I was with a woman who used to mean everything to me. And I couldn't feel anything but the dull,
surgical precision of disappointment. She said she wanted to fix it, said she'd end it, go to therapy, do whatever it took. But I wasn't sure if I could look at her the same way ever again. Because love can take years to build, but respect? That disappears in a moment.
I left that night without telling her where I was going. No shouting, no threats. I packed a small duffel, socks, razors, 2 shirts, phone charger, muscle memory from years of sudden deployments. She followed me to the door, begging. Her voice cracked, called me by the name she only used when she wanted something deeply. "James, please, don't do this. We can fix it." But you don't fix something you've spent months secretly breaking. I didn't look back. Just opened the door, stepped into the night, and pulled it shut behind me. Not slammed, just shut. Like closing a chapter I hadn't realized was the last. I spent the next 4 days at a cheap roadside motel 15 miles out. It smelled like cigarettes and mildew, and the air conditioning unit wheezed like it was trying to die. But it was quiet, and no one knew me there. I didn't turn on the TV, didn't sleep much either. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through years of shared photos, vacations, anniversary dinners, quiet porch mornings. All of it felt staged now, like we'd been actors in some life that looked perfect on paper but was rotting behind the curtains. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how long it had been happening without me noticing. You don't serve 35 years in the Army without developing a sixth sense for deception. I could sniff out a lie from a young private in 5 seconds, but I missed it in my own home, from the woman I'd trusted more than anyone on earth. I thought about Ethan, thought about how many times she'd smiled at me after coming home from him, how many dinners she made with his touch still fresh on her skin. I hated him. But more than that, I hated the version of myself that sat at the table, oblivious, asking her how class went. I played the fool without knowing the script, and she watched the whole thing like it was normal. Laura texted me constantly. I didn't answer. She wrote things like, "I don't even know who I am right now," and "I never meant to fall for him," and "You're still the only man I love." But none of that mattered. The damage was done. Love means nothing when it's buried under deception. I kept reading those texts in that tiny motel room, under the buzz of a flickering light, and wondered, how did a marriage built on loyalty become this? How did someone who stood by me through 2 wars decide I wasn't enough? By the 4th night, I drove out to the old base, not to talk to anyone, just to park outside the gate. I sat there in my truck, watching the same kind of soldiers I used to lead, walking across the lot, laughing, heading to the gym, the DFC. Young men, full of hope, full of trust and things they haven't had time to doubt yet. I used to be one of them, back when I thought the only way you lost people was in combat. But this was a different kind of loss. Slower, deeper. It doesn't bury the body, it buries the memory. The version of your life you believed in dies while you're still alive to feel it. And that's the worst part. I went home the next day. I didn't tell her I was coming. When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch, hair unwashed, red eyes, still in pajamas. She looked up like she'd seen a ghost. I stood there in silence. She asked if I was staying. I said, "I'm here to pack a few more things." Then I walked past her, into the bedroom we used to share, and felt like a stranger in my own house.
I packed slow, not because I didn't know what to take, but because I wanted to feel what the silence of that house really sounded like now. It wasn't our home anymore. It was just a structure filled with echoes. She tried to speak a few times, but I didn't respond. I had already heard everything I needed. And more importantly, I'd already seen who she became when she thought I wouldn't find out. Trust doesn't come back from that, not after 30 years of believing she was different from the rest of the world. She followed me to the doorway, like the last time, but she didn't beg this time. Maybe she understood. Maybe she knew that the version of me who would have forgiven, who would have fought for us, died the second she looked me in the eyes and said yes to sleeping with him in our home. I turned to her one last time. She looked like a ghost, pale, hollow, like the affair had stolen her soul too. I wanted to say something profound, something that would give the whole thing a clean ending, but all I said was, "You made your choice, and now I've made mine." Then I left. No screaming, no door slam, just a quiet exit, the kind that hurts more because there's nothing left to fight about. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. I didn't tell friends at first. When they found out, some were shocked. Others, the ones who'd seen her drifting away for years, just nodded quietly. I stayed with a friend from the unit for a while, then rented a small apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No shadows, no memories in every corner, just clean walls and space to breathe. The first month was the worst. I'd find myself reaching for my phone to text her about something stupid, a show she liked, a new diner opening, an article about shoulder pain and yoga. Then I'd stop myself and sit in the silence again. That silence again. Only this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt honest. No lies in the walls, no perfume that didn't belong, no pretending. I started walking more. Mornings mostly, before the sun came up. There's something healing about moving your body when your mind doesn't know what to do. I stopped wearing my wedding ring. It took me longer to take the photo off the nightstand, not because I still loved her, but because I still loved who I thought she was. And that's a different kind of grief. You don't mourn the person, you mourn the illusion. A few months later, I saw her in town. Grocery store parking lot. She looked tired, older than she did before. She saw me. Our eyes met. She gave a weak smile. I didn't return it. Not out of spite, just because there was nothing left to give. No hatred, no love, just finality. Like two veterans of the same war walking away in opposite directions. I never saw Ethan, never cared to. I don't need to know how it ended. I already know it didn't last. Things built on lies never do. Now, I'm rebuilding. Quietly. I joined a veterans fishing group, started writing a little, reading more, reconnecting with life in small, unremarkable ways. It's not glamorous, but it's clean. It's mine. And I wake up every morning knowing exactly who I am. A man who gave his loyalty, his years, and his love to the wrong person. But I walked away with my integrity intact. And at this point in my life, that's enough.